The tension line between the US, Israel, and Iran has evolved today from being merely a matter of military strategy into a process that is unsettling the fundamental pillars of the global economic order. From the phone in your hand to the fuel in your vehicle, the price of everything is now directly linked to the decisions made within this triangle. The global economy, especially after the 1990s, was built on the unhindered movement of goods and capital. However, today, this model is being replaced by the direct security policies and restrictions imposed by states. This tension in the Middle East represents a breaking point that could radically transform the mechanism of price formation. The energy market, one of the most sensitive points of the economy, carries the potential to be the first and greatest victim of this tension. The Strait of Hormuz is an irreplaceable waterway through which approximately 1/5 of the world's oil trade passes. Iran's military presence in this region and the threat of closing the strait in the event of a potential conflict mean not just an oil crisis, but a global supply shock. Every sudden spike in oil prices ripples through every stage of the production chain. Everything from the diesel in a farmer's tractor to the electricity costs of a factory and the logistics networks carrying products to markets becomes more expensive. This creates an inflationary wave fed directly by production costs, which central banks cannot bring under control simply by raising interest rates. However, the issue is not limited to energy alone. In the modern world, production is carried out through fragmented global supply networks. A smartphone's design is done in the US, its processor is manufactured in Taiwan, and its parts come together from various regions. In such an integrated structure, a war breaking out in the region, or harsh sanctions being implemented could halt not just one country, but the entire chain. Companies now consider not only labor costs, but also the political risk and the possibility of war in a region when making production decisions. This brings us to what we call the return of protectionism and bloc formation. Moving production to safer but more costly regions means a permanent increase in the prices paid by the consumer in the long run. Geopolitical dimensions have become the primary determinant of economic decisions. The US views maintaining control over critical technologies and energy routes as a matter of national security. Israel's military moves in the region and Iran's responses to them completely cloud investors' projections for the future. For an economy, the factor even more destructive than cost increases is uncertainty. If a company cannot predict whether a war will break out in 6 months in the region where it invests, it will not expand capacity or will suspend new technology investments. This investment stagnation leads to inefficiencies in global production and ultimately results in fewer products being sold at higher prices. Looking at it historically, such tensions between major powers have always reshaped the trade architecture. The system established in the mid-20th century, which aimed to reduce tariffs, is giving way to selective protectionism in strategic sectors. No product is now priced solely based on the raw material costs at its place of origin, the political tension of the geography where it is produced, the security of the straits it must pass through, and the sanction wars between capitals are also included in the price. This indicates an era where the economy has become completely politicized. The most prominent result of this transformation is a decrease in global prosperity and an increase in costs. As the share of defense spending in budgets increases, the resources allocated to social investments and technological development decrease. States are forced to shift their resources to unproductive areas in order to prepare for a potential war. This carries the risk of declining growth rates worldwide and inflation becoming a structural problem, especially for countries like Turkey, which are dependent on energy imports and located at the heart of trade routes. This scenario means constant pressure on exchange rates and inflation. In conclusion, the tension between the US, Israel, and Iran is not just a military conflict risk we watch on the news. This process signals the end of the free trade and low-cost world order that has persisted since the 1990s. The figure you see on a price tag now is a composite of geopolitical tensions, trade negotiations behind closed doors, and national security strategies. If this tension evolves into a permanent war or bloc formation, the world economy will take on a less integrated, more expensive, and riskier structure. The reality of the new era is this: economic decisions are no longer determined by market rules, but by strategies emerging from politics. This means that the consumer must pay not only for the value of a good, but also the price of the world's restless atmosphere.